Good Evening Bahamas coming up tonight on our news.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis announces reforms for the public sector.
The Ministry of Tourism signs a memorandum of understanding.
Oh, Fashion Week comes to the Bahamas.
Our news is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Andrew Knowles. Topping news tonight. Nearly 3 months after former Nassau Village MP Dion Smith and 8 employees of the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation were taken into police custody, their attorney has initiated legal action on their behalf. We get that story tonight from Vonnie Toot.
In 2 separate letters to the Attorney General and BAIC, Attorney Wayne Monroe QC contends that the detention of his clients, former BAIC Chairman Dion Smith and 8 BAIC employees, was unreasonable, without foundation and unlawful, and a breach of his clients' constitutional rights. Smith was taken into police custody back in May in connection with an alleged theft investigation at BAIC, which also resulted in the arrest of 8 employees of that corporation. However, no charges were ever brought against any of them, and police never found evidence of wrongdoing. In one of the letters, dated August 8, 2017, Monroe claims that his clients were handcuffed and taken in smaller groups to search their homes, even though they were never shown a search warrant. He writes, in each case, the vehicles in which they were taken to their homes proceeded with sirens, horns, and flashing lights. The effect of this, desired or otherwise, was that the neighbors of our clients were alerted to the attendance by the police at our clients' residence for their search. Further, the families of our clients, including minor relatives, were foreseeably alerted to the attendance of the police. Monroe says the circumstances attending the visits to his clients' homes have caused injury to their families.
And what was worse with the employees than with Mr. Smith, that it was wholly unnecessary for the police to proceed there under sirens and flashing lights and to station officers with assault rifles in the road and in the yard. In my judgment and in my view, that was only done to get the neighbors outside and to project a certain view. You would expect that sort of behavior if there is an allegation of a terrorist in the house or something of that nature.
Prior to the arrest of those BAIC employees, Monroe notes that police officers showed up at the corporation on the afternoon of May 16th armed with automatic assault weapons and semi-automatic handguns and put his clients in a police van in the public view, an event which he claims caused comments on social media adverse to his clients. Additionally, Monroe says his clients were detained at the police station in cells that had no bedding, adding the only provisions for sleeping were concrete slabs. As for Dion Smith, Monroe says the former Deputy House Speaker was invited to visit the Central Detective Unit on May 18th, where he was advised that he was under arrest following allegations of theft of a television, CPU of a desktop computer, external hard drive, and a set of plug-in speakers for a computer. Smith was handcuffed and driven to his constituency headquarters as well as his home, then held by police overnight.
You don't routinely handcuff people. And so handcuffing somebody for an allegation of a petty white-collar crime when they aren't known to be a violent criminal is unreasonable and an unnecessary restraint. And that's the allegation we make with regard to the employees as well. And so handcuffing is an issue. If you do not properly use it, then you infringe the person's right. Detaining overnight when there's really nothing else to investigate is also a breach.
Monroe also argues there was no legitimate complaint from BAIC because it would require a decision by the board. He attributes the entire ordeal to politics.
With regard Mr. Smith, we say that the only reason it happened as it happened was because of his political opinion, his political affiliation. And so those are the allegations we make on his behalf, that the arrest and detention was unlawful, unreasonable, and a breach of his constitutional right.
Monroe says his clients are now seeking damages, but he could not give an amount just yet.
As I'm still awaiting reports from the psychiatrist, this has had an impact on them and their family members. I've advised them to go and see the psychiatrist there and so once we get all of the medical reports, once my juniors do a bit more background on the level of awards in other jurisdictions, then we'll be in a position to discuss amount.
In his letters to the AG and BAIC, Monroe requests their position in the next 10 working days. Reporting for our news, I'm Fanny Tude.
Meantime, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis is pledging to take the politics out of the public service. Minnis, who was speaking at a special orientation for parliamentarians at Bahamar's Convention Center this morning, sent a stern warning to parliamentarians, insisting their job is to shape policies, not micromanage their ministries and departments. We get more tonight from Jasmine Brown.
Dr. Minnis made the comments while speaking to a group of MPs and members of the public service sector as he insisted his administration plans on changing the way they do business. And according to the Prime Minister, much of that change will center on taking the politics out of the picture. Minnis said gone are the days when employees are victimized in the public service because of their political persuasion, adding it will be different under his watch.
I do not want competent public officers sidelined or transferred just because they may not be a member of the governing party. I intend to be a different Prime Minister. Meritocracy and performance will be the order of the day.
The Prime Minister cautioned his ministers against letting their politics get in the way of their jobs.
I remind my ministers that our jobs is to set policy and not to try to be the chief administrator of their respective ministries. We must remember, as ministers, not to overly politicize our ministries. From my experience in government, I realize that there are necessary tensions between the political directorate and the public service. As politicians, we often want to move very quickly to advance various policy.
But his warnings did not stop there. He also had this cautionary message for those who do not support the F&M administration.
I will not tolerate anyone trying to obstruct the government's agenda because of certain party politics.
Minnis says at the end of the day, his administration just wants to enhance the public sector, and that can only be done with the bipartisan approach. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Thanks, Jasmine. And from the country's _1 sector, the Ministry of Tourism signed a memorandum of understanding with home-sharing platform Airbnb today. Giorgio Bain reports.
As a part of the Minister of Tourism's aggressive strategy to increase marketing revenue in his ministry, today a memorandum of understanding was signed with Airbnb Incorporated. According to Airbnb, the Bahamas has 1,900 active listings on its platform. A typical host earns an average of $6,000 a year, with guests staying an average of 4 nights. According to Tourism Minister Dionisio de Aguilar, his ministry must find a way to manage vacation home rentals to benefit all stakeholders.
In order to encourage and enhance growth and development within the accommodation sector, the Ministry of Tourism recognizes the need to do a number of things. 1, diversify the accommodation sector of the tourism industry. 2, circumvent potential industry subsector challenges. 3, ensure the safety of the home rental guest, owner, and property. And 4, develop and showcase the niche market as a national revenue source.
According to de Aguilar, the millions earned by vacation home rental companies such as Airbnb must be taxed in order for the government to capitalize on the expanding market.
Ideally, it would have been the 7.5% VAT, but the 7.5% VAT doesn't work for Airbnb. The reason being there are certain exemptions, and they like taxes that are clean and neat and easy to collect that don't have exemptions and creates work for them. So, of course, VAT exempts the first $100,000 of revenue, and so that became difficult for them to ascertain exactly, whether that person who was renting that house had reached that threshold or not.
Public Policy Manager of Airbnb, Sean Sullivan, said even though the company has been around for about 8 years, business recently began to pick up, and he encourages the government to implement tax on other vacation home rental companies to level the playing field.
It does go up a lot. I mean, the way Airbnb works is, our hosts, the homeowners, they're the ones who decide what their rate is. And then we apply whatever the applicable tax is on top of that. So it does make us more expensive compared to some of our other platforms. But one of the things that we encourage governments to do is to bring all of the companies involved in this space to the table and sign similar type tax agreements.
Reporting for our News, I'm Georgia Bain.
Long lines and confusion marked the beginning of government employee verification exercise, which started on Tuesday. Government now requires all of its employees to take part in the verification exercise this month or face an interruption in their salaries. Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest says there are a few kinks that need to be worked out.
We are satisfied that the process is working. We understand that there were some long lines yesterday. The process took a little longer than we had hoped, but we're ironing that out, and so hopefully the process will start to go much smoother. We're also looking at allocating more resources to the process to ensure that persons are in and out as quickly as possible.
All monthly and weekly employed public officers in the Bahamas, including people living overseas, senators and members of parliament, are required to participate in the exercise. Turnquest says there is nothing unusual about verifying government employees.
Well, again, we want to identify all of the legitimate workers in the civil service, including contract workers, so that at the end of the day we know that our payroll is accurate and that we're not paying persons who are not engaged in actually working for the government.
Employees are required to bring either a Bahamian passport, Bahamian driver's license, national insurance, smart card, or a voter's card. The exercise will end on August 31st. Well, still to come, preparations underway for Bahamas Fashion Week, so stay with us.